You are listening to Earn Your Stripes, presented by Cardinal Spirits. Welcome and thank you for listening to this episode of Earn Your Stripes, a podcast featuring myself, Justin Albers, and former Indiana and Michigan basketball player Max Bielfeldt. We have a great episode in store for you featuring former Indiana coach Tom Crean, who is now an ESPN college basketball analyst. Will actually be calling his first game with ESPN tonight, 7 p.m. on ESPN2. It's Northwestern at Georgia Tech, the Big Ten ACC Challenge. As Indiana fans know, Indiana and Duke meet on Wednesday at Assembly Hall, 9:30 p.m. That should be a wild environment. Number one ranked Duke, so talented. Such a test for this Indiana team so early in the season. It'll be interesting to see how they react, and I'm also interested to see what the atmosphere is like inside of Assembly Hall. Max and I plan to do, at the very least, a post-game show on Facebook Live after that game. So keep your eyes out for that, but we'll definitely be following that game, live tweeting it. Make sure you follow Max on Twitter. It's just his name, at Max Bielfeldt. I'm at Justin_Albers. You can also follow at the Albers Angle for all news relating to Indiana athletics. That should be an exciting game, but back to the podcast. Again, a great show in store for you. As I'm recording this intro, it is nearly 1 a.m. on the East Coast Monday night. We just finished recording with Tom Crean, who so graciously stayed up late with us. I don't know if that man ever sleeps, but he was fantastic. I think you're really going to enjoy that conversation. We got into a lot of different topics, a lot of different things. I hope you enjoy it just like you did the Ed Schilling interview in the debut. I got some feedback. First of all, appreciate everybody who listened to the first episode, downloaded it, shared it with their friends, subscribed on iTunes. Special shout out to Jared Morris for being the first one to leave a 5-star review on iTunes. The Assembly Calls, where you can find him, does great stuff, great coverage of Indiana, and also the co-host of a terrific podcast on the Brink with Alex Bozich, the founder of Inside the Hall. So shout out to Jared. If you want a shout out on this podcast, please go to iTunes, subscribe to the Earn Your Stripes podcast, leave a 5-star review, and just let us know what you think. Share it with your friends, share it with your family. Help us grow this thing into what we hope it can become. Again, really appreciate you listening. I know the first episode, the file size was quite large. I've worked to correct that, so hopefully this one is better. It's kind of a learning as we go thing. We have all the equipment, we have all the people, we have the guests, we have the insights. It's sometimes the editing that is the hardest part. If you happen to know a aspiring podcast producer or someone who's great with audio editing that might be interested in helping us out on a part-time or full-time basis, feel free to reach out, jmalbers@indiana.edu. But for now, I'll keep grinding out these Monday nights. It's 1 a.m. I probably won't have this podcast finished editing until 2, but that's okay because we're trying to get it out Tuesday and Thursday every week, and we really think you'll enjoy this episode of the podcast. Before we get to the show, I want to give a quick special thanks to Cardinal Spirits, the presenting sponsor of this podcast. If you have not heard of Cardinal Spirits, if you have not been to their location in Bloomington, you definitely need to try it out. Go to cardinalspirits.com to learn more and try all their liquor. The only thing really keeping me going and motivated, energized, besides what we just heard from Tom Crean, is the Black Raspberry Bramble vodka from Cardinal Spirits. They were gracious enough to provide us with a bottle. I have that mixed with Sprite, and I can't tell you how smooth and delicious that tastes and how motivating that is to get me through this podcast editing process and get this out and uploaded to iTunes so that you can listen to it on Tuesday. So again, special thanks to Cardinal Spirits. They have everything you could ever imagine. Terrific vodka. Like I mentioned already, the Black Raspberry Bramble vodka is something new for me, but I'm really enjoying it. They've got gin, award-winning gin. Max is a big fan of that. I've got a bottle sitting waiting for him to try, and I'm sure he'll have tons of reaction once he starts drinking gin and tonics from Cardinal Spirits. Basically everything you could want in a distillery, Cardinal Spirits provides. Drink local, support local. We really appreciate them jumping on board and having faith in us as a podcast and jumping on as the presenting sponsor before we even launch the first episode. That takes a lot for a company to do, and we really appreciate and respect that. I hope that you will in turn go out and purchase some things from Cardinal Spirits, buy a t-shirt, buy a bottle of vodka, go and visit them, go on and enter our contest for the distillery tour, whatever you can to support local. That's what I always try to do, and they've supported us. You enjoy this podcast. I hope you'll support them in return and take your business to Cardinal Spirit. So that's all I have to say sponsorship-wise for this episode. Let's get into it right away with the listener questions and then the featured guest, former Indiana coach Tom Crean. This podcast wouldn't be possible without our listeners, and so every week we try to go and take some questions from you, the listeners, the fans, whoever you might be. Going forward, you can ask your question via Twitter, reply on Twitter, DM us, email jmalbers@indiana.edu. However you want to get in touch with us, whatever question you want to ask, you can do so every week, and we'll try to answer as many of them as we can. This week, we start with a question from Susan from Evansville. She says, Justin, I really enjoyed your first podcast and cannot wait until the next one. My question is for Max. What is your favorite memory or most memorable moment from your college basketball career? And if you could change anything, what would it be?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna split that up and give a Michigan one and Indiana one, just because they're hard to weigh against each other. They're almost two different books, so I'm gonna pick a chapter out of each book. I'll start with the Michigan one, and I mean I got to go with the Trey Burke shot in 2013. Excuse me. There's March to beat Kansas he's pulled up from about 28 feet to tie it up, sending it to overtime where we beat Kansas and ended up going to the Final Four, losing to Louisville. I think that's got to be the most memorable, just because we were down 12 points or so, and there's a few minutes left. And, Kansas was an incredible team. They had Jeff Withey back there just blocking every shot. He's so big and athletic. Ben McLemore knocking everything down. And for us to kind of come back with the heart there and him to knock down that shot I'd said for years and years and years, the 2005 Darren Williams shot for University of Illinois against Arizona when they went to the national championship as well. I'd say to anyone, that was the craziest sports moment I had ever been a part of. This was the first time that I had a moment where I was like, oh my God, I was just a part of a shot that will go down for years and years and be played on, NCAA tournament, 2048. This is one of the best moments, and it was just unbelievable to be a part of. And it was just, oh my God, jaws dropped. It was incredible.
I've always wondered in moments like that, Max, what kind of emotions, or could you possibly describe what you're feeling in that moment? And what's a locker room like after something so crazy, exciting, unexpected like that happens when you get a buzzer beater in such a big game like that?
Yeah, well, first off, when it happens, because it was funny, Trey comes off a screen from Mitch McGarry, and I think Withey fell, or one of their bigs fell, and he pulled up over the outstretched arm of, I think it was maybe McLemore, and everyone's like, oh God, like that's the shot we're going to take. We had plenty of time. And I remember Beeline was like, oh, he said the same thing. Like, I can't believe we just took that shot. And then when he knocked it down, I mean, I can describe the feeling as, if someone just electrocuted your brain and you can't even think, but every circuit is just firing. It is just the most wild thing. And you're just like absolutely awestruck. I think, my jaw was just completely dropped for a good, 5 minutes, and I was just in disbelief. And then obviously the locker room, playing with the guys you played with for the whole year and getting closer as a team. The locker room's ecstatic. It's like the best night that anyone's ever had with their best buddies and something great. It's whatever your best thing you can relate to is. It's honestly like that. You go in there and you feel like you're on top of the world, and it's cool because you go hang out with your family after, and that shot's being played over and over on ESPN at the bar you're at, and everyone's cheering for it. It feels like the whole world revolves around you for a quick second. And I think that's a pretty cool feeling to be a part of.
Yeah, Trey Burke was one of the better college basketball players I can remember seeing in my lifetime. I mean, he was just – I hated seeing him as an Indiana fan and student. I mean, he was just lethal. And as his career went on, even more so. What's your favorite memory from Indiana?
Yeah. Well, first off, thinking about Trey, I remember going to Indiana and Crean, who we have later on this podcast, he actually decided to put Oladipo on Trey, which is kind of interesting. You'd think Oladipo would guard Tim Hardaway Jr. or Nick Stauskas or somebody, and he put him on Trey, and that was a huge part to Indiana beating us. He was so good defensively; it was tough to beat. But Indiana, I think the question was most memorable, not necessarily favorite. So I think I gotta give it to going back to Michigan, just because I'll never forget how I felt. I could easily say winning the Big Ten, or beating Kentucky and going to Sweet 16. I had so many great moments, but most memorable has got to be that, just because I've never felt in my life similar to that, and I don't know if I ever will again. Just because it's like in the business world, it's almost like you're running a company. Let's say I'm on with Nike, and I'm Phil Knight. I'm the CEO of Nike, and all of a sudden, I'm with Adidas, and we're competing. It's so bizarre to go back into like the Nike headquarters, and it's so bizarre to go back into the Chrysler Center, and just every little thing. You remember all the sweat you've poured into that court. You remember all the times you had with teams and the coaches and the fans, and every little memory. It's just wild, and you go back and we're driving in on the bus. It's little things like this. We're driving in on the bus, and I drive by the apartment I lived at my senior year. It's like, well, it's kind of weird. It's first thing I go into visiting tunnel, and the manager that comes out to open the door for us to get in for practice for shoot around is a manager that worked for me, or that worked with me. And you kind of remember, like, oh, hey there, like, remember me? And he's trying to be professional. He's like, hey Max, you know what I mean? It's kind of funny, but I mean, just going in and walking down the hall, and going into visiting the locker room, obviously I had no idea what to expect. I always said this, I didn't know whether the people in the crowd were going to cheer or boo. And, it's such a confusing situation. It doesn't happen much. I mean, I was always joking that the first person who either cheered or booed, everyone would just be like, okay, I guess that's where we're supposed to react. So luckily, I think the first person out there cheered. They're happy to see me back. And, I was saying hi to the usher, the usher that would always let us out. He would hold us back and wait for the flags to be appropriately timed to get out there. And he would come say hi to me, the media guy from Michigan. It was just really nice. And obviously the players at half court, talking all to them and hugging them. And it was good to see. It was good to be back. And, we were both having pretty good years that year. And, both made the tournament and had good march there. But I'd say that's just the most memorable, just because, I got in that game, and I've never felt so bouncy in my life. I think a little bit, that was probably the best layup lines I've ever had. I was so bouncy, and I was like, man, I'm feeling great. The adrenaline's kicking in. It's almost to the point I got to the game, and I was like, oh shoot, hang on, I gotta get the juice back in the legs, because I was so amped up before the game. But yeah, I think that's got to be the most memorable, just because it was such a unique thing that I experienced. And even talking to Spike Albrecht, he transferred from Michigan to Purdue for his fifth year. I was texting with him, and I was like, man, like, how weird does it feel? And he's like, dude, I had no idea. You tried to tell me. It's just so bizarre and so hard to explain, but it's just, yeah, that was definitely my most memorable, unique experience.
The second part of that question was, if you could change anything, what would it be? I'm not going to let you choose beat Louisville and win a national title, or
can I say Louisville get accused of the sanctions at the time it actually happened?
No. I want you to change something in your control, a decision, or a non-injury thing. Obviously, you battled injuries at Michigan. A non-injury thing, something that you could control, a decision that you made. Are there any that you wish you could have back, or that you could change in retrospect?
If you're going to eliminate injury, just obviously getting hip surgery earlier would have been nice. But
I think that counts. I think that counts, just because it was a decision. It wasn't like you decided
that was probably
to
the
get
one.
hurt.
That was the one thing. I mean, you think of every other little thing that happened, and I'm such an optimist. I think that I was listening to Austin Hatch, who went through 2 plane crashes. You've probably seen the 30 for 30 story on him, as well as all of our listeners. Great story. Go check it out. ESPN 30 for 30. Austin Hatch, type that in, and you're going to shed some tears and really find your heart real quick if you're looking for your heart. But, he was talking today about, how life is about 5% what happens to you and 95% how you respond. And, I think changing something's difficult because, even the simple thing like surgery, yeah, it would make more sense. I would have had, 4 years there of health, and I might have averaged more and played better and been able to jump higher and cut higher, whatever. But since that didn't happen, I got to be able to go to Indiana and completely grow as a person that way. And that's just how I look at it. And I think that's a healthy way to do it. And I'm so grateful of all the people I met through Indiana, and as well as Michigan. I would have loved staying there the whole time. But I think, it was unique to be able to go to Indiana and have the success I had and meet the people I met, just the people. I mean, I'm such a big people person. I think that was something that I really, really appreciated. So, I'm going to say, I'm going to say nothing, just because that's how I look at it. Make every decision like you can't change it. And, that's kind of what I'm going to go with.
Hey, we're trying to bring a positive vibe to your life through this podcast, so I respect that answer. I like it. Max, you want to go ahead and ask this second question?
Yeah, definitely. So, second question, anonymous question. It's why is Romeo considered a must-get for IU? He doesn't want to play at Indiana, or else he would have signed a long time ago. I want kids that want to be here, not someone you beg. Justin, what do you got?
Well, first of all, the listeners obviously know the question is referring to Romeo Langford, the 5-star recruit out of New Albany in southern Indiana. Probably the best talent to come out of this state since Eric Gordon. So he's a big-time target, and obviously a lot of schools want him. Every school wants him. He's a great player, and he really fits well in the current state of basketball, because he can play on the wing, he can play multiple positions, defend multiple positions, and also play on the perimeter at a high level. He could play point guard if you needed him to. And I also want to emphasize in this question, the word want is in all caps. I want kids that want to be here, and not someone you have to beg. And the way I kind of view this question is, I wouldn't view it as begging. The recruiting process, having followed it and covered it and had my own brother go through it recently, who now plays at Marion in Indianapolis, it's a difficult process for everyone involved, but it's most difficult, and I think Max can speak to this, for the kid, because ultimately it's the decision he's going to have to live with, not anybody else, not any other fans. His parents will have to live with it to some extent, but not to the extent that the kid himself will have to live with. So you want to make sure that when you do make a decision, it's the right one. And there's no reason to be in a hurry. There's no reason for Romeo, as a younger guy, when Indiana offers him, to commit on the spot without considering any other options. That would just be, in any walk of life, that would be considered a silly decision. If you got a $1 million offer for your company and you knew there were other suitors, but you didn't stick around and listen to them, you just accepted on the spot, that would be considered a little bit of a reckless business move. So there's no reason to be in a rush. I think that is the bottom line here. You need to see every possible element to all the schools you're considering, which is what he's done. He's taken official visits to 5 schools, including Indiana. He's eliminated schools along the way, and it's a difficult process, Max, and I don't understand it as well as you do, because I never went through it myself. But having all these great schools and these big-time coaches and going on these official visits and being treated like royalty for a weekend, being around some of the top athletes at those schools, and like I mentioned, around those coaches, it's a difficult process. And you can take 5 official visits. My recommendation to any recruit would be to take those 5 official visits, because why not? You have them. It's on the school's dime. Why not go out there and see? Even if you think that one school is where you're going to end up, I would still recommend taking those other official visits, because you never know, your mind might change. I've seen so many recruits that come off every single visit, and it's the best one. It's the most recent one. It's the best one. So oftentimes it takes taking all 5 and then taking a little time, sitting down with the people that you trust, your family, your parents, and actually thinking it over, thinking over the pros and cons of each place. Actually taking the time and not making an emotional decision, because in most cases, a decision you're going to have to live with for maybe not in Romeo's case, but for multiple years, possibly 4 years. So you want to make sure the decision you make is the right one because you only get to do it once. You only get to go through college basketball once. So I wouldn't look at it as Indiana begging him and continuing to beg him and he says no. And I wouldn't look at it like he doesn't want to play at Indiana or else he would have signed a long time ago. For one, he couldn't sign until just recently. He could commit but not sign. And for two, he's being a smart young man, which is probably being guided by his parents and his those close to him. And he's taking his time and looking around at all the options before he makes his decision. Me personally, I think he ends up at Indiana. That's just my prediction. But I don't think by any means that he doesn't want to be at Indiana just because he hasn't committed to Indiana yet.
Yeah, and my take on that, first off, why is Romeo considered a must-get for IU? Answer to that question is because he's really, really, really good.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
Exactly.
a must get because he's a program changer. I mean, part of the reason I transferred to Indiana was because Coach Beeline at Michigan was trying to recruit Jaylen Brown, and he was, he was really weighing out decisions, and that was my scholarship, and most people would be like, man, like if he wanted me at Michigan, then he would have offered me the scholarship. I'm like, dude, all right, I understand. If you can get a Jaylen Brown, a program changer, someone that's going to be someone that has ability to change the entire program and take you wherever he goes, put the team on his back in college basketball, I understand. So he's considered a must get because he's really good. If he doesn't want to play at Indiana, would have signed a long time. Going to the next part, so for instance, I was a late commit. I didn't commit until a month before I had to report to campus, and it was because I love kind of weighing out decisions. I mean, because you're not just going to play basketball. I mean, I know it's the whole student athlete thing, and people are like, they pick the school based on the basketball. Yeah, that's a big part of it. But you're also going to school. I mean, you're trying to you look at the transfer numbers. Think about how many people have transferred and how those numbers have just gone way up in college basketball. The importance of making the right first decision could save you a year of your life. I don't want to transfer somewhere and have to sit out an entire year watching my team go through the good and bad and not be able to do anything about it. You're basically nobody for a whole year. I mean, it's not fun. So if you can make the right decision from the first get go, yeah. I mean, yeah, it would be nice if everyone could just follow their heart and their heart be the right decision. It's like, man, I love Indiana. This is the right place. But it's your brain's got to play a little piece in it too, and it's got to weigh some things out and talk to the right people. Just because these coaches are so smart in how they recruit people these days. They're trying to find the right family member or mentor that has the biggest influence on the kid. And if let's say Indiana is the perfect place 10 years down the road for Romeo, but whether it's the right Kansas assistant coach gets to the mentor that Indiana didn't know about, and he convinces Romeo to go there and he regrets it, like, yeah, you gotta put your time in and let time be the teller of all truths, and go from there. So I wouldn't worry about, I want kids that want to be here, not someone you beg. I think, giving the kid time and understanding that is completely a part of the process, because it's bigger than that. I mean, from a fan's perspective, it makes sense for you to, want the bottom line. You want the kid to love the university and pour his heart out, and it be the 100% choice, and he should commit right when he gets the offer. Yeah, it sounds great in theory, but when it comes down to reality, it makes a lot more sense. Obviously, me as well. I'm a late commit, and I love weighing things out and figuring out the best option. So that's where I stand on it.
The Robert Fennesseys are few and far between, the guys that take 0 official visits and commit early to the school. Those are not going to happen every day. Literally what's happened with Romeo Langford is he has waited until the point when almost every other recruit waits till. He plans to commit in the fall, so it's going to happen here sometime shortly. And even if he does wait until the spring, there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of kids that do that. The bottom line is, keep in mind you're dealing with 17, 18-year-old kid here, and this is a decision that it's not going to impact his entire life, but it's an important life decision for anybody. And try and keep that in mind. I think fans sometimes get a little overzealous and feel jaded toward a player because he doesn't commit right away. But he's doing his due diligence, and if Indiana ends up with him, that's what you wanted him to do. You wanted him to choose Indiana because Indiana was the best fit in his mind for him after reviewing all of the schools. So just be patient. Romeo is worth it if Indiana can get him. Trust me on that. And
and then if you still don't understand it, think about when you were 17 years old and think about all the decisions you wish you spent a little bit more time on.
Exactly. Where did you choose to go to school and why? And that doesn't even include the basketball element.
Even a little thing. It's like nobody made good decisions. You would look back like, man, I really wish I thought about that more. That age group is so stereotyped with doing the wrong thing and making emotional, quick decisions. And, it's almost shows some maturity in him.
And think about how you would view him had he committed early and then reconsidered because he didn't do his due diligence and another school emerged that he liked better and decommitted from Indiana. You would like him a whole lot less. So just stay patient. It's all part of the process, and I think it takes people a while to understand that. But I think that's the best way to answer that one. But continue to send us those questions. We love getting those questions, interacting with you, and being able to answer some of your questions on air, get your name on air. So send those to us, and we'll try and get to as many of them as we can. Right now, though, we have reached the point where we're going to go into our featured guest interview of this episode. We were fortunate enough earlier tonight to tape an interview with former Indiana coach Tom Crean, now an ESPN analyst, getting set to call his first game for ESPN. Northwestern at Georgia Tech in the Big Ten ACC Challenge later tonight on ESPN2 at 7 o'clock. Without further ado, let's welcome in Tom Crean. All right, we are joined now by Tom Crean, new ESPN basketball analyst, college basketball analyst, and former Indiana and Marquette basketball head coach. Long history in the college game of basketball dating back to his days at Michigan State with Tom Izzo, other places. Tom, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. We really appreciate it. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to be with you guys. So it really is. I don't get to see Max very much. So at least I get to talk to him, and I get to talk to you, Justin. So I think it's a good deal.
Tell us a little bit about this ESPN thing as we get started here. How did that come about, and what kind of role will you play there this season?
Well, I think once things happened in March, and I had the opportunity to go and work with ESPN at the Final Four in Phoenix, it was like being at the top of the line. I mean, when you're working with Reese Davis and Seth Greenberg and Jay Williams, certainly Jay Billis, and being a part of the sports centers with Sage Steele, I mean, the whole group, and you just get a feel for not only how good the people are that are on the air at ESPN, but certainly how good they are behind the scenes. And I had an opportunity to visit with Fox as well, and it really just became a situation of we knew we were moving, and the opportunity to be involved with so many different things with ESPN in the sense of studio, in the sense of being able to do some analysis in games and being able to see so much basketball, from literally all over the country. It just became something that made a lot of sense to me. And my respect is high for the level of work that goes into it. And I wanted to work, and I wanted to be involved in a situation where I could not only add something basketball-wise, but where I could keep learning it and keep studying it. And it's been good, and it's been one of many things. This has recently just started. So I was in the studio a little under 2 weeks ago. This will be my first game on the 28th, Northwestern at Georgia Tech. There's other games coming up throughout the month and then through the conference. So it's starting to happen, and it's part of this whole opportunity I'm taking advantage of to be around a lot of different things, to learn a lot of different things, and make sure that we're putting our best foot forward in everything that we're attempting to do.
Now you've done the studio thing before. I always enjoyed watching you with Adrian Wojnarowski on the Yahoo NBA Draft Show and things of that nature. It seems like kind of a natural thing for you to just talk basketball with other basketball people in a studio. What do you think the challenges will be of going and doing a game on the sideline, and what are you looking forward to about doing so?
Well, as we tape this, and I haven't done it, there's a lot of, I wouldn't say I'm nervous about it. I'm anxious for it because I'm anxious to see, how it goes and what I've got to get better at quickly. And I think it's like anything else that you do. You want to make adjustments and you want to be coachable and you want to learn a lot and be able to apply it. Like, I want to bring value. I want to be a teammate, because really there is absolutely nothing like being a part of a team. And it's just a different team, right? It's a different team and a different result. But at the same time, you know that when you're a part of it, and if you're adding value to it, and you want to be coachable. So that to me is really, really important, because any team is only successful is the alignment, togetherness, and chemistry that you can put together in it. And so to me, that's going to be fun and just getting a feel for it. I really am excited about it, and excited who I'm going to work with first with Dave Pasch, one of the highest level of play-by-play people that there are, and it really doesn't matter what sport. And I think I'll work with other great people throughout the year and in the studios. So just kind of take it as we go. I know I've learned a lot already, and I haven't even been on the air yet. So as far as doing a game, so to me, that's the exciting part of it.
Yeah, Coach, I always enjoyed listening to you talk basketball. I know, being a coach, you don't get to say too much to the general public, but I mean, I always said when everybody asked me about you, I always say you're one of the best motivational coaches I've ever met. I'm interested, to see that on the media side now. I mean, who knows? Maybe you'll get people, these fat guys on their couch running through walls or something. But I think it's interesting, just because when you're coaching, you basically know who your team's going to be. You're recruiting guys, and you put a lot of time into it. Now, kind of thrown into the media world, who's kind of been your family? Who's gotten close to you? Who do you really see yourself working with in the future and current? And who do you see yourself kind of pairing with best in the media world?
Well, I think it's too early to tell that. I really do. And I think that's the key, is that you try to find a way to mesh with everybody. And you brought up a great point, because when you're locked into your team, you're locked into your team in the next game. And there were so many days in coaching that you get home and there's a game on, or there's 2 or 3 college games on. And you know what? You've been watching film all day. You've been coaching all day. And you know what? All of a sudden, well, wait a minute, Victor's on, or Dwayne Wade's on, or Wes Matthews is on, or the last year Yogi's on. So you want to go and watch that. You want to watch your former players. And so what gives is other college basketball games. And one of the things about being with ESPN is, because I don't have an assignment of a league right now or just one part of the country, you're like preparing for every team. And it's not like you're in a situation where you're just preparing for a few teams in a few leagues. You're preparing for every team inside of those leagues. And the last thing you want to be is unprepared or not sharp when something comes up, because it's like anything else in coaching. Victory lies in the organization of the non-obvious. That's an old quote that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's the same thing with basketball. I mean, you watch broadcast games and what you learn, and Hubie Brown told me this, and I've had some great conversations with people like that have just given me a lot of insight. And Hubie made a great point. No matter what's going on in a game, that game means a lot, okay, to 2 different groups. The 2 teams that are playing, it means a lot to, whether it's the players, the coaches, the school, the administration, the families, the fans. And you owe it to that broadcast to make it a big deal. And so to me, basketball is a big deal. Talking basketball and being able to bring things in a level that you hope people like. And I know I'm going to have to make sure that I'm not so X and O oriented, or the best advice, or one of the best pieces of advice I got from Dan Dockage a couple of weeks ago. He said, do the broadcast like you're talking to your team. And I'm going to really try to follow that and then make the adjustments inside of that. Because I think that's important, you know, and because I love being in the film room. I love studying the film myself. I love when we would sit in there. I'll still never forget going through your visit, Max, when we went through every shot you took from Michigan and were able to go through it. You know what? And you were able to absorb it. I was able to get it across. Your dad certainly got it. And then we go out on the court and we start to put some of that stuff to life. Well, the only thing I'm not doing right now is going on the court and putting some of that stuff to life. I've had some opportunities to do that throughout the summer, you know, which was good. Now I miss that maybe, but at the same time, I love the fact that I'm getting to do something that I love and that I'm learning a lot and preparing for my future.
Yeah. I mean, you're such a coach at heart too. I mean, you can just tell you live. I think that's why you're such a joy to play for as well. I mean, you can, when you have a leader in your organization, whether it's basketball or business, and you can just feel the passion that the guy who is in charge has for the program or the company or whatever it may be. It's easier to work for. And I think that was something that I really enjoyed playing with you for.
Well, I appreciate that. You know what? And when you get to a place, and you're a great example of this. Nick Zeisloff is a great example of this. It's really easy when you have freshmen to see it grow, but when you have people that have been through it, and you realize, like in your case, that there was so much more, okay, in you that could be brought out that you may not know could be brought out. I had a pretty good idea, but until you get together on that court day in and day out, you don't really know. And to watch you, to watch Nick, to watch all the other guys that we had absorb it, and everybody gets it different ways, but it's watching their confidence grow. It's watching them become so committed to what the team has got to do. And then all of a sudden, what happens? We win a Big Ten championship. You have the best year of your college life. The last game of the year that we lost, you had one of your very best games that you ever played in. You continued to be playing your best basketball, okay, as the year went on. And I heard Gus Malzahn say that the other day after they beat Alabama. And he's, you know, because they've had a couple of big wins, obviously, late. And he said, not every team is playing their best basketball at the end of the year. Well, the more player are playing their best football at the end of the year, but his team was. And when you can get players to do that, then you got a chance to be really successful. And I think that passion can never waver, you know, whether it be from me, whether it be from anybody else that's in charge of leadership. That passion cannot waver. But you've also got to have a high level of preparation, organization, creativity, you know, all the things that go into it. That's all part of the passion. And for me, that's basketball brings that to me.
Along those same lines, Coach, I thought something that was really smart a couple of years ago when Tom Thibodeau parted ways with Chicago and had that year off and did the media thing, but also took the time to tour around to some other programs, other organizations, and learn from their coaches and pick up things here and there. Is that something that you plan to do in this year, along with your ESPN work, to travel around and see the inner workings of some different coaches and just add to what you already have as a excellent college basketball coach?
Absolutely. And I've been doing it really since probably, I would say March 24th, you know, when, I should say March 26th, when I went up and saw the Philadelphia 76ers before they played game 72 of the season, and it was in Indiana, and started with the coaches meetings in the morning, early up in Brett Brown's suite at the Conrad Hotel, and watched him organize the staff and how they prepared for the walkthrough, how they prepared for the game, how he brought it to his team, how they walked through. And there's been tons of them, because the last thing I'm going to do is waste time on things that don't matter. And the most important thing through everything, you know, especially with what our family was put through, is to make sure that they're squared away. And that is by far. And I've been able to include them in those type of things too. I was able to take Riley to different things. I mean, it's all different. You know, when you go through what we went through, you know, when the job was taken away, is that it affects everyone. So my son is in a situation where he's doing his internship, okay, and he's in our offices every other day, and Brett Burke, director of operations, is overseeing him, and so he's doing all this. He's doing pre-scouts. He's involved in the basketball. He's learning the organization, and all of a sudden, boom. Okay, not only if things change for me, all of a sudden he doesn't have that internship anymore. He doesn't have that place he's got to go to. Now he's got to go, and he's got to go back into school and add a couple of weight classes in his senior year. And then he's got the decision with Indiana and all those different things that go into it. And so by far the most important thing, is to put your family first. We always say it. And as coaches, sometimes we don't always do it, although we think we do. But the most important thing is you have to do it. You have to live it. And I had Megan graduating and getting ready to go off into her career. So that was first and foremost, always will be. But at the end of the day, had taken tremendous opportunities that have been put in front of me to be able to go and get around things and really realize that I'm going to make some additions. You're always going to make deletions. You're always going to make tweaks and changes. It doesn't matter if you won a Big Ten championship like we did in Max's senior year. It doesn't make a difference. You're always going to tweak and change. But what we're doing works. All right, who we were doing it with works. And now I just have added some things in my mind that if I go back to coaching, it will put us in even a better situation. And it all comes back to the bottom line is who you're surrounding yourself with, not only in your team, but who you're surrounding yourself with that you're working with outside of your team. And I think that's the stuff to me that I love about what I'm doing now with television. You get to see it from a whole different angle, and you get to see it with a group of people that they are not only want to be at the top of the profession, they are at the top of the profession. And how they stay there is so important. And that's been a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, Coach, I mean, you talked on family right there. And, there's one thing I say about your programs. It was a huge family. It was run like one. Everybody was close. And I think that was one of your biggest strengths was you had guys that bonded and, whether practice was tough and guys could bond over that or whatever it may be. I think one of the most interesting stories I want to share is, you remember you're talking about my visit to Indiana when you were there driving us around in the golf cart. And my mom asked you, she asked, what you wanted your legacy to be. And I remember you had a great answer. You're saying, you basically said you want it to feel like home and that players can come back anytime. And I thought that was so awesome. I mean, it's just a very telling thing. It's very well thought out answer. And how is that, how we can talk basketball and life and business, as college basketball is becoming more of a business and everything's getting more disconnected in the age of media and no face-to-face interactions anymore. How is the family aspect still so important when you're running a program or just in life?
Well, you know what, Max? And I was having this conversation with somebody tonight. I had a meeting earlier tonight, and we were having a conversation because if you look at what, especially now with the college football situation the way that it is, and you watch the releases that come out, okay, from the administration and say, okay, we want to thank the coach for what he brought to the community and what the family brought to the community and all those things. But at the end of the day, well, we just want to go in a different direction with our program. We expect to win more, all those types of things. And I say that because it's very, very easy. All right. When you look at this day and age in college athletics, really in a lot of businesses, but since we're talking college athletics in that business, it's very, very easy to look at all the important stuff, all right, that you do with families, the trips like we took to Baltimore. You look at the different things and it's really easy to say, well, you know what? You just have to win. Okay. It doesn't matter. All you have to do is win. That's all anybody cares about. No, that's not true, because you look at the experiences that you've had in college at Michigan and at Indiana. You look at what your teammates had an opportunity to go through. You look at it. I look at all the people I've coached as a head coach and an assistant coach over the years. That's what matters. The ability to pick up right from where you left off. When you see or talk to that person again, the ability to have a real bond, because not only of the successes that you've had, but because of the shared adversity that you've had to go through. And even in your short time in Indiana, we went through some shared adversity, right? And we would have never been able to win a Big Ten championship and do what we did. And I know this, we would have never been able to win 2 Big Ten championships in those 4 years, 2 entirely different teams. But we would have never been able to win those championships if we didn't have real close bonds. And that's the beauty of it. So the beauty is not only, and this is what I want, what I want at Indiana now, just like what I wanted at Marquette when I left, is every player that was a part of it to always feel welcome, a warm welcome, to be able to go back in there and feel respected because they were owners inside of that program. Now, you're not always, I wasn't able to hire everybody, every former player that before we came to Indiana that wanted a job. You weren't going to get everybody to get on board. You weren't going to get everybody happy. And that's okay. You can't do all that. But we'd have to put a lie detector on me to have somebody come and say, well, we didn't feel welcome or we didn't feel like we could ever be at the program. Because that's not true, right? Even for the guys that I didn't coach. And that's the beauty of what it's all about. It doesn't mean you give everybody what they want, but you give them what they've earned, and that's the fact that they are members of that program. And that's what happens.
Yeah.
The longer you go, the more you realize we are all an extended family when we've been together. People that have never done those things or have never shared in those responsibilities that go into a team, they struggle with that. And sometimes you end up, being accountable to those people. But it will never change. I will never change, whether I go back to coaching or not, what it means to make sure that the people that are with you understand the real value of family comes down to being selfless, comes down to having an ability to solve problems, comes down to the ability to be committed to somebody else's success, comes down to the ability to be aware and alert for the things that are out there. And as I've always said, to leave that they have a little bit better idea how to be the spiritual leader of their home when that day comes for them to be that person.
Yeah, those are such big topics. I mean, it's great.
Sure,
and I think
but it's real. Those are all very real things.
Is. And I think it's why I enjoy. I'm a little biased because I've always grown up in a Big Ten fan, and I always enjoyed watching college basketball over the NBA. Even the NBA, I enjoy watching the NBA, but I think even the level of basketball, it's better than the NBA, but in college, there's something like intangible just about the way they're playing, and you can just tell that they live together, they're hanging out together, they're going through some of the toughest times and ups and downs they'll ever have because it's college basketball. And, they're 18 to 22-year-olds in a very volatile part of their life. And you watch the NBA, and it's lacking. Some teams you can just tell they're lacking that brotherhood and the selflessness, and it's bottom line. It's about the money, and the coaches are about the wins, and the players, whether it's they have to go home to their families and wives and they're not hanging out with the other guys, and it's hard to relate. And I think that's personally one of the biggest reasons I really enjoy watching college basketball. I mean, could you talk to kind of the difference between just the NBA and versus college and kind of where that goes? Because I'd say if there's one NBA team that I think of right along the lines of what you're saying is, Golden State. And I know they have Kevin Durant and Steph Curry, and they're not hurting for talent, but like KD's over there, he's just looked like he's having fun. Steph's having fun. All the guys, you know what I mean? I don't know if that's Steve Kerr running the operation in a certain way, but what do you see when you see that?
Well, I think so much of team success, is the ability to respect one another and the ability to forgive one another. And I think that can be in the pros. I think it gets harder. But I think let's say you saw the Philadelphia-Cleveland game tonight. Okay, now I don't know the Philadelphia players, but Brett Brown, in my estimation, is trying to build a family atmosphere inside of that program. And the longer that group stays together, I wouldn't bet against them. Now on the other side, and I had a chance to spend some time this summer before training camp with LeBron and Dwayne working out together. And obviously I've been around Dwayne for a long time, and I've been around LeBron some, but I've never been around them together training, and it was incredible. Now, you talk about brotherhood. Now, that's a brotherhood. There is such a joy when they are working together, and such a passion that they have for getting even better at what they do, that you're going to stand out in the wrong way if you're not like that inside of a team. What happens is there's probably not enough of those situations that happen in pro sports, that when you do find it, that's where your champions are. And when you do have the ability to grow people together, which is harder. It's harder, and it's getting harder and harder in college because it's so easy for people to transfer. I mean, the transfer numbers go up constantly. But when you have your best players that are your hardest workers, they're committed to defense, okay? They are coachable, but very, very importantly, they understand ball movement. They understand togetherness, connectedness, whether it's the defensive end, the connections that go with moving the ball offensively, and you can go right on down the line in sports. And I think there's a mutual respect that grows. It doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's each other's best friend, but I think any champion, any great level program can say the same thing. They pick up right from where they left off when they see each other, whether it's 1 year, whether it's 10 years, whether it's 5 years, whether it's 15 years. It doesn't make any difference because they shared in something that was incredible. And, there's not a lot of reunions for people that finished 10 and 20, right? Because there was too many things that didn't go right inside of those situations. There was too much selfishness or too much desire to do your own thing. And invariably, you're dealing with human nature in every situation that you have. It's very, very hard to get teams to understand they have to be committed to each other if they're going to have individual success. I think it can be done, and I think it's a matter. I don't think it's a matter of pro or college. I think it's a matter of how you form the atmosphere and how you demand and detail and hold people to the standards that work.
Yeah, and one more thing to add there. I mean, it sounds easy, just make your culture selfless and make it more like a family. But even get into the business world now. I mean, that's so hard to do because everyone has their own agenda. It's so hard to unify people under a common goal, going the same direction, and having that brotherhood. I think that's, whether you know it or not, I think that's where you really, really excel. Just putting guys through that and understanding, there's a depth to guys playing as brothers. It's whether it plays into vulnerability or a common bond over a tough, whether it's hell week in practice or whatever it may be. I think, you did a great job of promoting a culture of the selflessness and family. And I think, that's so underrated because it's so intangible. I mean, you can see guys laughing at each other's jokes and you can see it there, but it's so hard to lead that operation and make people actually play that way.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think, again, it's what happens is, and I think it's the same in business. I've seen this in studying organizations and being around it and really being around some great places that have not only, that the places are not only great, but they've been around great players, right? And they've been around the best of the best and what those people stood for. And what you really have to get to the point of is like, nobody wants to lose. Nobody wants to look bad. Okay. There's a certain drive and you can't just be the only one holding the accountability stick. You just can't. And because it gets too hard, it's got to be enveloped. And the strongest cultures, all right, and that's one of those overused and understood or misunderstood words, okay? Because so much of culture, okay, comes down to, it's like character. What do you do when nobody's looking? And so many times that's culture. And the bottom line becomes, is there enough truth being told to the team, okay? The good and the bad, right? The good and the bad. You cannot be afraid to if it means piercing somebody for them to understand what they have got to do to get better. Let's go to one of the greatest examples I have, and you were a part of it. We're 5-3. We come home. People think I'm going to be fired. We can't guard. We can't do anything. We lose to Duke. We're terrible, right? We lost 2 games in Maui, and everybody's killing our defense. And I come home and I say, it's not just the defense. We're not committed to running. We're not committed to getting up and down the court as fast as we can. And until we get that, we're not going to defensive rebound better. And we're not going to defensive rebound better until we get back and create more stops. Okay? But we've got to get our energy going by getting our break going again. because we're not running. And a great example. All right, we lost to Duke because they ran on us. Well, we never ran back at them. And that was one of our biggest parts of the game plan. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
You remember that?
Sure.
Okay, so we come home, we beat Morehead State, okay? And Dave Anderson comes in, which was a huge hit for us because he really invoked guys, and he pierced them in a different way. Well, if you remember, we're getting ready to play Fort Wayne. And I think we're a little tired, but I think we're more mentally tired because of everything that we've gone through. And we put an edit on that was basically a Yogi Ferrell low-light tape with some mixes of highlights. But it showed just how slow we had been that season. It showed just how slow we were in Maui. It showed just how slow we were against Duke. And then there were clips that probably 15, 20 clips somewhere in there of Yogi at his best over his career. And then there were more clips, okay, of us doing it right. And the bottom line was, we're not going to start guarding better till we start understanding that we've got to run better. And when we run better, we'll guard better. And as you know, we went on a 10-game streak from that point on. And that night, because Yogi finally saw and he absorbed that, wow, I'm not going fast enough. He gets 38. We play that game with IPFW, and we are flying down that court. Now, mentally, okay, we were probably tired and fatigued, okay? And that made us physically look worse. But because we got rejuvenated inside of that, and all of you looked at it and said, no, we got to go. You know, we can play faster. We're better than this. We went on a roll, right? And all those steps go into the whole process of how you become a champion.
I'll
and
never
the bottom
forget
line
that
is,
game. I was just
absolutely, IPFW, absolutely.
I remember the big man on IPFW. I've never seen an opponent look so tired in their life. I'm like, wow, I could put up 50 right now if I got the ball. They are so tired. They were drained.
And again, we were. If there was a team that should have been tired because of everything we'd gone through, it was Indiana. But because we were able to, because Yogi absorbed the message and he saw it on film and he made it his own. You know, that's the thing that makes the difference. You know, when you're not afraid as a coach or a leader to keep pointing out, this is what it is, this is what it's got to be, and we're not going to do anything to tolerate what it's not. And it takes time. It takes time, but eventually it's the players that make the difference. And that's why you're walking around with a Big Ten championship ring like that. Your second one. So, I mean, to me, that's a huge thing. Third.
Yeah. Sneaked one
you
in
had
my
three
freshman.
Big Ten championship rings?
Yes. Sneaked one in there my redshirt freshman year.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, that's good. So I'm learning something tonight. That's good. Did Justin go to sleep or is he still there?
I'm still here, Coach. I'm still here. I'm enjoying this conversation.
Jump in.
We got going.
We'll talk till 5 a.m. Go ahead.
Coach, I think one of the things I appreciated most about you when you were here, outside of just the pure basketball, was just your love for teaching. And I think every coach is a teacher, but your genuine joy for teaching, whether it's your player or whether it's a student or whether it's a young writer at a crossroads in his career, you just are a natural teacher and you love to do it and you're so good at it. And I'd reference I think I was a freshman in 2009 and you were speaking at the IU auditorium, one of the promotional things to try and get students excited for the basketball season. And I think you spoke as much about life lessons and things that would help the people in attendance in life as much as you did about promoting the program itself. And that just kind of spoke to me, and it still does to this day. And so I just want to get into that side of you and the teaching and how important that is to you. And I also, now that I'm not impartial, I'm not paid to cover Indiana, I'm just an IU alum, I want to thank you for what you did for Indiana and what you did for me personally, going out of your way the way that you did. You talk about doing things when no one else is looking. I mean, I had nothing to offer you, and you still did everything you could and really essentially changed my life in that way. So I want to thank you for that. But to the teaching aspect, how did that develop for you? How important is it to you in your coaching, in your life, in your parenting, and where did that come from?
Well, I appreciate that first, with what you said. I really do. And I think how I look at all those different things is really that's what we all should do, right? We're all created equal, whether we want to believe it or not. And God put each and every one of us out here for reasons. And we all have different strengths. We all have different talents. We all got different weaknesses. But we all have something, and we need more and more people that will help find that for people, that will also tell them the truth. And I think some of the things like that I've learned about leadership and teaching is if you can't look across the table and try to get an understanding of what's going on with the other person, you know what? You're really not a leader. You're self-serving, and self-serving leadership is not leadership. It's making sure that you're serving yourself to fulfill what you need, not what everybody else needs. And I think the same thing goes for give and take. If there's not a level of give and take and a level of ability to come together on solutions and not just make them one-sided, like I always told the team, you can't live a life a one-way street. I mean, you've got to find as many two-way streets as you possibly can. And I think, to me, that's what teaching becomes. I think you look at everybody for who they are. You have a vision of what you think they can accomplish, and you may not be 100% right, but you're going to trust your instincts on it, and you can't get frustrated when they don't see it, but you also can't back off when they don't see it. You've got to keep working at a level, and along the way, people teach you how to treat them in the sense of how you teach them and how they react to it. And you can't just teach people with one brush. I mean, but you also can't say, well, he just learns this way, so we'll leave this alone, or he's not quick enough to learn that, so we'll slow it down. No, sometimes you got to push. And leadership is about, trying to figure out how far to push and when you push. And I think, to me, you can't be afraid to challenge people mentally and physically to bring the best out of them, because really none of us know what the best is, right? None of us know, like, go back to Max. We didn't know what Max was capable of. All I knew is I thought he was capable of a heck of a lot more than what he's been doing. And I think that's the bottom line, to see how far you can go with that. And you do it out of care, because it's the two-way street, right? You're going to succeed as a team if you can get that person to be better and understand what they've got to do, and you're going to become a better coach or leader because of it. And to me, I think I've always been a fan of my coaches. I've always been an admirer of them, and I look back at days that the best people I were ever around were the hardest on me. And it's really, really easy to go back and look at the people that kind of, I wouldn't say enabled, but push you just as far as you're comfortable, not where you're uncomfortable. And those people, people in this world that will enable you, they're a dime a dozen. People that will develop you, they're fewer and far between. The people that will absolutely drive you and not back off when you don't want to do it, those are people you want to gravitate to. And I always wanted to be one of those people, because that's what I gravitated the best to.
Yeah. Coach, one last thing before we get to our quote to note section. There's one thing I remember. I was in your office, I think early in the season of my last year, and you had so many leadership books in your office, and you were talking about, how much you read them and how you try to pick things out, and something you study intensely. The leadership books I've read, they tend to look at leadership from different angles. And overall, you've read so many books, and I know you've had years and years of experience leading and coaching and everything. What are a couple of things that are overarching over what you've read or learned through leading people that you think are the most vital things when being the head of an operation?
Well, it goes back to somebody that I wish you guys would have been able to meet, but he passed away that year, and in his last few years of life, he was not in a place in his life where he could be around teams. But we had a man that came to see our teams at Marquette, named General Hal Moore, and just one of the most decorated war heroes of all time. And he said some things I kept the quotes in my desk. I kept them in the office. I know I've said those to you guys before, but I really, over a period of time, kind of gravitated to the point where, like, that's what I really believe that they were part of the living belief that you have. And a couple of them were trust your instincts. And when I go back to every good decision versus every poor decision, your instincts are such a huge part of that. And Tony La Russa took it a step further. He said instincts are an informed feel. So those become your gut, your gut feeling to things. But trust in your instincts is such a big one. Another big one was when there's nothing wrong except there's nothing wrong. And that's when a leader has got to be at their most, it got to be most alert. And basically what he was saying is when you think everything is calm, when you think everything is fine, that's when you've got to be looking the most. And that goes along with another great quote that I had in the conference or that I keep everywhere I'm at, is that a leader should expect up to 5 unexpected things to happen every day. And how that leader handles those 5 things defines his leadership, defines his or her leadership. And that was by Bill Parcells. So they really kind of go along the same line. You've always got to be aware of things, even when you can't see them. You've got to have a feel for it. So those things always stood out to me, probably as much as anything else. And then the last one is this, and this has helped me as much in coaching as anything else, especially the early years at Indiana. 3 strikes and you're not out. There's always one more thing you can do to influence the outcome in your favor, and then another, and then another. And anybody that ever wants to study General Hal Moore, there's books. You can look them up. These quotes are out there, but they probably, those things to me meant the most, because when we first started at Indiana and we took over, the situation that it was, we had to do anything we could do to be in a game. Okay. It wasn't even as much early on about winning the game. We had to do anything we could do to be in the game so that we might have a chance to win it at the end. And what's important when you do that is you really, really love coaching, right? Like if you don't love coaching, you're not going to make it in that situation. And Max, you weren't around for that, but Justin was. And those days were so brutal as a result that the process that we went through with taking chances in coaching, with putting in different defenses, with doing different things to give us a chance was incredible. Because there's never been a team that's been more behind the competition than what those first couple of years were at Indiana, because the league was in a great place and Indiana had to start over. And to me, everybody that played on those teams will always learn from those situations. And they may not say it like I say it, but they'll always know that they're capable of being involved in anything, because we had to overcome so much. And eventually it turned into a team that won 26, then 27 games and was number 1 in the country for a lot of weeks. So those things to me really speak volumes. And for the most part, they come from one person.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, talking about the instincts, you said everyone has their own way of doing it. I had a professor in the Kelley School of Business at Indiana, and he was talking about, if there's 2 main things in business you want to keep in mind, it's A, when you have a strength and you know it's your strength, whether that's communicating or selling a vision through storytelling, whatever it may be, you have that bat, you swing it. Always just keep swinging that bat, keep swinging it, and when you know your Achilles heel, do everything you can to protect that as well. But everyone's so different, and everyone excels, in so many different ways, and some people's strengths are other people's biggest weaknesses. And I think if there's one thing that I heard from what you were kind of saying is understand those instincts, trust them, and develop your own style.
Absolutely. And as long as you put your faith in God, because we could go right on down the line and talk Bible verses and people that were in the Bible and look for inspiration, as long as you never forget that that's the bottom line and what you do. And like I said earlier, it comes down to everybody has value, and it is our job to help people find that value and help them build it. And for those people that think that that's corny, good for you, But I'd sure rather live a life where you're trying to help people And it doesn't mean that you don't get upset, doesn't mean you don't have issues, doesn't mean you don't have problems, doesn't mean you don't get angry. But what it means is you're really trying to look for the good in people and try to help them find it themselves. And to me, that's what it all comes down to. You never give up. You never let anybody take your spirit. You never let anybody create a doubt in you that didn't earn it. And really, you don't take a lot of advice from people that don't have an investment in you moving forward. And that's stuff that really matters as you move on. I know it does to me, and it doesn't matter what line of work it is.
You offered me a lot of valuable quotes that meant something to you around the time that I mentioned earlier and that I wrote about last year, that really hit home. But I think the one that's the most difficult to actually accomplish is something along the lines of focus on what God put you here to do and not on what others are not doing. And I mean, going from a place where mostly remote work, and what I was doing when I was covering you, in the media, to an office space. And it's so easy to look at a coworker and say, well, he's not doing anything. Like, why should I have to work and twice as hard to pick up for him? And that quote always resonates with me because it's probably the most difficult. It's so true, but it's probably one of the most difficult ones to learn how to live. And I'm still in the process of doing that. But I think that one that you shared with me is one that's really important and one that, while important, is very difficult to actually accomplish in your day-to-day life.
Well, I'm 51 and it's hard, right? I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's really, really hard. I got to the age of 48 and started to really believe that, control what you can control. You hear it from your young adult age, right? But at the end of the day, it's really hard to grasp. But I think that's the whole key to anything is everybody's going through the same stuff. But the biggest thing with that is what's valuable to you and what you know to be of value. You can't let somebody else's value system, no matter where it's at, okay, be the judge and jury of what's important to you. Now they might get to make decisions. People get power all the time because it was bestowed upon them. But it doesn't mean that they're right about what they're saying to you. It doesn't mean they're right about what they're doing. They just have a title, right? Or they just have they have an opinion, and it's becoming more and more in this world. And so the hardest thing is to not let those other judgments affect your values. But you have to fight for it, right? You have to fight for what's important to you and not let something knock it out. But it's an ongoing thing. And all of us, anybody that's listening, no one masters it. Okay? No one masters it. And at the end of the day, you keep striving to master it. And I think that's the best you can do.
Coach, if we could really quickly before we let you go,
sure.
Max introduced this really cool segment, and you've offered up a lot of them already. So one may not come to mind, but knowing you, I think one will. The quote to note section we do on this podcast, one that's resonating with us currently or one that's on our mind. Is there one that comes to mind other than the ones that you've shared that's spoken to you recently or that has played a role in your life here in the past few weeks or months?
I think one right now is that perseverance is a choice, right? And I think so much is that perseverance of going through things, it's so easy to just knock yourself down. And I think the one that I would probably attribute then to Dr. Charles Stanley is that disappointment is inevitable, but discouragement is a choice. And I think when you look at perseverance, just like discouragement, you can make a choice on what it is. Disappointment, we're all going to go through things in life. And you can waste so much time doing woulda, coulda, shoulda, and who you're blaming for this and who you're blaming for that. But the fact of the matter is, disappointment does come. That when you allow something to knock you out and you don't persevere over it, you made that choice. And I work through that constantly. I mean, everybody to some form or fashion, has to make that decision. Maybe not every day, but more often than not, are you going to get through it? And it doesn't matter if it's having a bad game, if it's having a bad day, whatever it is, you've got to be able to work through it. And so much of it comes back to what we decide how we're going to handle it.
That's a good one, Coach. My quote to note for this week is going to be, your present circumstances don't determine where you can go. They merely determine where you start, and that can be attributed to Nito Quabine. I think that's so important to realize, because you so often hear people complain or talk about how they're in a rough situation, or the cards are, the deck's stacked against them and they can't go where they want to go because of their present circumstances. And so I think that one's really important, because it's so true. I mean, yeah, you may be where you are right now, but that doesn't mean you can't go where you want to go eventually if you work to get there. So that's going to be my quote to note this week. Max, what do you have?
Yeah, Coach, the more I talk to you, the more bringing in Dave Anderson to come work with us. For those out there who don't know, Dave is a big time author based out of LA, and motivational books. He'll get you going. I actually went to one of his seminars up in Chicago with my dad. It was funny. I went to the bathroom and we're on break, and someone's like, "Man, like he just gets you going, right? You want to go run through a wall." And I really respect you bringing him here, because he was so great for the program. So I'm going to go with a Dave Anderson quote. It's gloating over successes, the victim of our past, as nursing and rehearsing hurts and failures. Yesterday ended last night. Get back to work. I love that. He's no nonsense. Like, let's just go. And I think he really peels back the layers of how our society is. Obviously, we're a lot of victim thinkers these days, and he's just old school, and he's like, let's just do it.
No, he really is. And you know what? He's what you call, he's a true inspiration person. And I'll never forget the day that he came in, and the first day, that day we played Morehead State, and just absolutely connected with so many of you guys that very first day. And that's what you want. I mean, you want to surround yourself with people that you don't want to just be motivated. You want to be inspired, because at the end of the day, it's like a good run in a game, right? If you get into a good run in a game and you're on a 18-4 run or a 20-6 run, everything's going good for you. Okay. Well, all of a sudden, what happens if that thing flips, right? And then momentum's up for grabs and it goes the other way. Motivation can be short-lived, but if you're inspired and you're going through it, you're going to weather those storms. I mean, and I think that's such a huge part of why teams win games, because they can weather the pitfalls of a game, and why teams win championships, because they can weather the pitfalls of a season, because their inspiration for getting through it far outweighs the short-term motivations that they have to get through something. And I think that sounds corny, but it's true. And I think the more you can surround yourself with people like that, and Dave Anderson is a tremendous example of that, the better off you're going to be.
Coach, I'll let you go on this one. We've taken up way too much of your time the night before your first broadcast. But if I asked you this question today, this time next year, are you on the sidelines coaching a college team?
I don't know yet. I really don't. I mean, I'm happy. Our family, everything's so different, now. But like, we're living in Florida. I'm growing in a lot of areas. I've been around so many good organizations and see what it looks like again, and proud of so much of what the former players have done. I mean, it's an awesome feeling. I mean, and to me, it's got to be for the right reasons, right? And it's not about what's the name of the school or how big the arena is. It's being in the right environment, surrounded with the right people. And so, to me, we'll wait and see. I think that's the beauty of the situation I'm in right now. I want to be great at this. I want to work like crazy at it. I want to learn a lot. I want to bring value to it. I want to keep being in different situations. And I'm having a lot of fun watching the former guys that are playing in the NBA or their careers that they're having, and being around my family. And that's good. But I mean, the passion for coaching or the passion for making people better, that hasn't changed whatsoever. But I'm in a good spot of really, we're happy. And I think that's the most important thing you can have. And then just see how it goes from there.
That is the most important thing. I'll pray that you find happiness in whatever you choose to do, both this season and going forward. Coach, again, thanks for taking the time to do this. I feel fortunate to have met you and had you be a part of my life. And I want to thank you again for what you did for Indiana and what you did for me personally. And thank you again for taking so much time to do this late on a Monday night.
No, I appreciate it. And you're a great example that the pluses and the people that you meet far outweigh the people that are tough to deal with and the minuses. They really do. And I think that's when you look at it like that, you realize that pretty much the situations that you're in, there's a ton of positives. And that to me is what we're always trying to strive for.
Definitely. Coach.
So I appreciate it very much.
Thanks so much. Definitely be tuning in tomorrow to hear you kill it. I know you will. I know you're going to revolutionize the entire industry of broadcasting some way or another. So
you've got way more experience than I have, Max. You have way more experience. Give me a tip. Give me a tip. I'm serious. You got more experience than me.
Oh, I mean, I think I like Dan Dox's just, talk to him like you would talk to your team. You have a little different perspective because you're coming from a coaching standpoint. But, I think people want to hear stories. People want to, they want the energy and they want things that make sense. And, just make it fun to listen to and have a good time while doing it. And I think that's the most important thing I've learned.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's definitely the plan. Now try to pull it off that way. But great to be with you guys.
Coach.
You can hear former Indiana coach Tom Crean on his first ESPN broadcast tomorrow night, Tuesday night. Tonight, if you're listening on Tuesday, Northwestern at Georgia Tech in the Big Ten ACC Challenge, 7 o'clock on ESPN2. Thanks again, Coach. We appreciate it. Hope to talk soon, and best of luck tomorrow night and beyond.
Thanks. Good luck to both of you, and good luck with this endeavor, too. So I really appreciate it.
That's all for this edition of Earn Your Stripes. Again, special thanks to ESPN college basketball analyst Tom Crean, former Indiana coach, for taking so much time late on a Monday night to join us. Thank you to my co-host Max, who was at the Philadelphia 76ers game in Philly against Cleveland, saw some of the best NBA talent on one floor: LeBron James, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons. He hurried back to his friend's place after that game to get prepared and ready for the Tom Crean interview. So I really appreciate him kind of adjusting on the fly with me and making himself accessible to do that. We think this is a podcast, not only this episode, but in general, that you guys are really going to enjoy. If you are, please tweet at us, send us an email, let us know what you think. Feedback is really important in this business, and I always enjoy interacting with you. I love getting the listener questions, and we plan to make that a regular part of our show, but it can't happen without you. So continue to send those questions, whatever it might be, whether it's Indiana basketball related, sports related, or non-sports related. We'll answer it if we can. If it's appropriate for the podcast, we will do our best to get to it on one of the episodes. So continue to send us those questions. Thanks again to Tom Crean. For Max Bielfeldt, I'm Justin Albers. This has been another episode of Earn Your Candy Stripes. Subscribe on iTunes, leave us a 5-star review. We'll see you next time.